The conversation has been productive. The negotiations are still continuing. We are here to represent all sectors of the Canadian economy, and the work continues over the next number of days.
That was Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand speaking just moments ago in Beijing, responding to a question about canola and agricultural products. She's there alongside Prime Minister Mark Carney for a high-stakes diplomatic visit with the Chinese president. Trade and tariffs are expected to top the agenda. Many embattled industries hoping that this trip leads to some relief on Chinese tariffs on agricultural products in this country. Meanwhile, in the auto industry, concern that that kind of relief could be tied to the lifting of Canadian tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Carney's visit comes as his government faces increasing pressure to forge new trade alliances as Donald Trump is casting doubt on the future of the CUSMA trade pact. Catherine Cullen, host of The House on CBC Radio, joins me live from Ottawa. Good morning, Catherine. We just heard from Foreign Minister Anand speaking there at the Canadian delegation, just arriving in Beijing, late at night there now in Beijing. You listened to Anand. She seemed to be laying out what was going to happen on trade, maybe tamping down expectations of deals. What did you hear?
I mean, my eyebrows shot up when we heard the first words out of her mouth, Susan, where she said, I want to stress the magnitude of this visit. And I thought, oh, we're not lowering expectations at all. But as she continued to talk, the minister seems to be saying the significance is that the visit is happening, the importance of the conversation between the leaders. So I'm not sure that the federal government is indeed trying to set the bar quite high here. A lot of these issues are very complicated. They are thorny. You talk about the issue of EV tariffs and how that interacts with tariffs on canola, pork, and seafood. These are thorny issues. And I don't know that there's going to be a clean resolution to some of them at the end of this, but obviously there was a little bit of watch this space from her as well. Our colleague Janice McGregor pointing out earlier in the hour that continual reference to people-to-people ties, that this isn't just about trade. So there's obviously something happening in that space. I will say when we talk about people-to-people ties, that conversation in the last few years in Canada has been a lot about transnational repression and the Chinese government threatening people within Canada, attempting election interference. So the other thing, and there was really a lot packed in there, but one thing that I noted as well was the real effort for a reset there. She said this is a new government, a new prime minister, a new foreign policy, so on and so forth. Of course, it is still a Liberal government, but the former ambassador of Canada to China, Guy Saint-Jacques, has been speaking on many media outlets and talking about how Justin Trudeau, in his view, mishandled some moments of this relationship. Obviously, there are parts of this that the Chinese government needs to own when we talk about what happened with Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, their detention, their imprisonment. There's a real attempt to hard hit a reset button here, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what shape this relationship takes with a prime minister who is ultimately of a different disposition, much more of a technocrat than the previous one, and the extent to which the Chinese are open to that.
Be closer to how Chinese deal with their economy in that way. Can you just help me out for a second? People to people. I mean, it's a political statement. It's a bit of spin. What does that actually mean?
I am asking myself the same question. I mean, it can mean a lot of things. It could be about tourism. It could be about things like research, efforts to collaborate. But again, this is where it gets tricky. I keep thinking of that Walt Whitman quote, "I am large, I contain multitudes." I mean, China, the Chinese government, incredibly complex, not ultimately always all that well understood by Westerners. But when it comes to things like, deepening ties between universities, we know around the world, you look at Australia, there are concerns about the infiltration of, agents of the Chinese government in Canadian institutions and the stealing of intellectual property. I'm not presuming that is where this is going to go, but I'm just saying that this is so multifaceted. Clearly, the Canadian government has something in mind, and it's worth noting, you talked about it earlier in the hour, Susan, so many steps that have led to this moment, right? There was the meeting between Xi and Carney at APEC at the end of October. Anita Anand visited China herself. Just in December, Scott Moe and Cody Blois, the Prime Minister's parliamentary secretary, as well as senior Canadian officials, were in China. So there's been a lot of lead up, a lot of track laid to this moment. I'm sure they're coming in with fairly clear ideas of where they would like things to go. But typically, what happens in the room matters a lot too. And because some of these issues are so thorny, the precise shape that some of these solutions or step forward are going to take, I think we're all going to be watching with enormous interest.
Absolutely. And, classic diplomacy here, we're saved, it seems, the most important meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping to Friday at the end of Carney's visit. That will be set up and they will know what they're going to talk about there. But the face-to-face is also being stressed as important. Of course, we're hearing from Donald Trump as these trips are going on. Yesterday, calling Canada's free trade pact with the U.S. irrelevant, making clear, putting more pressure on it. Maybe adding a bit of urgency or maybe, sort of poking Carney's mission to China. What do you think?
To me, it read very much as art of the deal, right? Oh, I don't care. Who cares if there's a deal? Matters to them, doesn't matter to me. Don't worry about it. I'm not sure that it's the kind of statement that is ultimately going to make Canadian officials, Canadians in general, I think, work themselves up into a froth or a panic, which isn't to say that there aren't going to be problems in the process forward with CUSMA. I think it's fairly clear that this is going to be a very rocky road. The question is just a little bit more, where does this go? I don't think those statements necessarily tell us that. I do think it's interesting, though, one of Trump's co-campaign managers noticed this Carney visit and was tweeting yesterday, this isn't going to go well for Canada. So another big question hanging over this is the extent to which any new agreements with China, be it on electric vehicles or anything else, might provoke the ire of Donald Trump and further complicate this already complex situation.
Yes, just a little reminder on the side saying, remember us. Don't throw us under the bus when you're there meeting with the Chinese president. That was very clear. So interesting. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Catherine Cullen, the host of CBC Radio's The House.